Well, it's been a whole, month since the last Disney Plus Marvel show, so I think it's about time that we get another one. Yes, hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well because it is time for me to review the premiere episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So, being honest with all of you, and you probably picked up on this if you've been watching my reviews of other Marvel movies and TV shows, but I've been feeling a lot of that like Marvel MCU burnout lately. I especially with the Marvel TV shows, I felt like they just really have not lived up to their potential. They've gotten kind of formulaic and kind of a little bit samey in a way that I haven't been finding as interesting or as intriguing. And I think especially for the Disney Plus shows, they've really kind of fallen flat because they've just kind of failed to really fully flesh out and deal with all their ideas. A lot of the shows have felt really truncated and trying to shove a lot into the end point to also try and match up with the big fighty blockbuster Marvel feel that every movie and TV show has needed to try to do. And I felt that most especially with Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, just two shows that really were like rushing to the finish and then just try to have the big bombastic battle at the end that ultimately felt a little bit diluted from what the shows were ultimately trying to say up until that point. I say all of that though because when I look at She-Hulk Attorney at Law, this was one that I was really excited might be able to turn me around on my burnout that I've been feeling for Marvel projects for several reasons. I mean, number one, Tatiana Maslani from Orphan Black. Hell yeah, I am so here for that. She is a great actress and I've loved her in everything that I've seen her in. Also, we're getting 9 episodes, which has not happened since, I believe, the WandaVision show, which I think is, other than Loki, the strongest Disney Plus Marvel show. That was a show that pretty consistently remained awesome all the way up until the very last episode, where, again, fell into that sort of needing to be a big blockbuster Marvel movie thing. But ultimately, I think the 8 episodes prior to that were incredibly strong, and I think allowed the show to really develop its ideas and themes. And so this show having that same amount of episodes, I think is really, really cool. And on top of that, the show also seemed to be a little bit more lighter than the rest of the MCU TV shows that we've been getting. It seems like it just wants to be kind of a fun sitcom, and also the premise of her being in a law firm and helping tackling like being a lawyer for like superhero people and supervillains as well, kind of more naturally fits into a television format more so than any of the Marvel TV shows to date, other than, again, maybe WandaVision. So, with all that being said, coming into She-Hulk, I have been incredibly excited. And this is as someone who doesn't know She-Hulk, the character, but I've heard many good things. So, I just wanted to give that preamble because having watched this first episode, I am still kind of on the fence on whether I'm going to end up really liking this show or not, mostly because this episode was a lot of setup and was just really getting us to where I hopefully will begin in the next episode to actually play a lot more with our premise with her being an attorney at law. This one was all just mostly an origin story for her character. And that being said, the origin story mostly works, but again, it is just sort of like, all right, we're getting from A to B, and I'm more excited to see where we're going to be at once we get to B. But that being said, let me talk about some specifics that I do really think are interesting and intriguing about this show. First off, Tatiana Maslani, she's great. I think she's nailing it. The comedy here isn't necessarily like over the top, like making me laugh out loud. It is a little bit more lukewarm than I would want it. But the energy that Tatiana brings to the comedy, like her delivery always works. She seems to be very excited and just having fun with the role. So Tatiana Maslani, A plus here. I also liked Mark Ruffalo returning as the Hulk, and I liked, again, seeing a little bit more of the evolution of his character and getting to see his character outside of the sort of high stakes environments of the bigger movies. I think that's one of the benefits of this show. I mean, to be quite frank with you, one of the best parts for me of more recent MCU films was a movie like Avengers Endgame, where it spent the first hour, while being dour and depressing during that first hour, but also having our characters have a little bit more of a low-key life. We get to see what their day-to-day was, and I actually found that really intriguing, and I think a television show is a better way to showcase that. And getting to see him on like a day-to-day level and living his life, and also learning a bit about how we got to see him be the Hulk that we knew in Endgame. And like learn a little bit about his time during the blip, where we get to see this like hideout that he was working at that Tony gave him. I think just fleshes him out and makes him feel more of a real character. There are some questions though that like I had since Endgame that this episode doesn't really do a better job of elucidating for me. Like for example, him saying like, oh yeah, I'm now living as myself even in Hulk form, because he has that watch wristband thing, being Smart Hulk, and I'm just like, so did you kill Hulk before? Because like Hulk was an entity, and you're talking about like you don't have an alter ego in there anymore, and it's like what like dude, did you murder the like the it was, he seemed like he was at least a person, so I don't know, there that bugs me a little bit. I understand why it's not really addressed, but it's just like huh. That being said, his back and forth with Tatiana Maslani really, really works. I mean, one of those things that is always a problem with these types of things where you like introduce a random family member of a big important character that has never appeared before in things. And again, I know she's in the comics, but that sort of always kind of has that forced feel. But it really comes down to their chemistry. And Mark Ruffalo and Tatiana Maslani do have a decent amount of chemistry. And their scenes where they're bouncing off of each other and him trying to teach her how to like calm down and live like sort of like a less stressful life, I think really is sold on the back of their chemistry that they have within this episode. It does really speak to that, even though I've never seen these characters interact before this episode. It feels like they have been. I also I just love the whole sequence where we just get them going back and forth and him trying to place his own experiences of being Hulk onto her, being like, look, you need to calm down, live a stress-free life. Like he is trying to tell her how to live her life and putting his own sort of way of understanding things onto her. And I think that conflict really comes out really, really well. And I kind of liked the exploration of that, where he does have good and honest like feedback and advice to give her. But also, she doesn't necessarily always need him to be overprotective and tell her how to live her life. And I think all of that I think really just nicely worked, where he sort of over places himself into her feet in not necessarily seeing what she needs always in the moment. And those conflicts worked really, really well. And there's some decent comedy within there as well, with her trying to kill her with the blades at one point, or the fight that they have where they go back and forth, and as well as the montage of them like getting shoved off the cliff and stuff like that. Like all of that I thought was, again, not laugh out loud funny, but I was decently amused. However, some of this episode's choices have me a little bit concerned for some of the tone that the show might take going forward, in that a lot of the discussion around this show has been about like, hey, yeah, it's female empowerment. Like that's a lot of like the reviews I've been seeing about the show is like, yeah, this is the female empowerment show. And I am concerned that the show is gonna kind of have this like girl boss vibe to it. Like, yeah, she's gonna girl boss it. And I kind of already see a few elements of that here, where like the first time she hulks out, it's from like creepy dudes at a bar. Or the lawyer guy who tries to mansplain to her at the beginning and the end of the episode, where she's trying to deliver her closing arguments. And again, it's not like those things don't happen, but and I'm all here for like a strong like character being a woman. And I was just trying to avoid saying strong female character, but screw it, I'm here for a strong female character. But again, those just feel like this, like, very forced, very, like, yeah, girl power, where is this, stopping the mansplaining, girl boss moments, and not actually getting into the more nuance of that kind of experience. And that sort of, like, makes me nervous that might be a lot of this movie. Again, I'm here for it. I want to see a strong female character. I want to see a woman in this role. But I just hesitate to see those moments in this show, because it's like, it just feels like a little too shallow and beat on the head with it. The moments that I think work better are the moments where she's speaking up to Bruce, being like, look, I don't have your same issues that you have. As a woman, I've been having to control my anger a lot more than you have. I've had to deal with that a lot more than you have, and as such, I probably have a little bit more emotional control than you have. And I think that moment actually worked really well and sold really well, because it built out of their conflict and was a little bit more nuanced. Even though it was a little bit beat you on the head, it was a little bit more nuanced of a conversation, more than just like, ugh, this mansplaining dude, right? Ugh, dudes, right? Like that just, it's too on the nose and shallow. So I hope that the show, as it goes forward, leans a little bit more into the more nuanced conversations about the different experiences of a woman in the workplace, a woman in a superhero role, and the expectations placed upon a woman, if that's the route they want to discuss, more so than the shallow stuff. Because I think there's potential for that, and I see moments of that here, but I hesitate to, I hesitate with the rest of it and some of the other moments. To wrap out, there's some other cool stuff here that I found interesting, like we see the spaceship that sort of causes them to crash. And I'm curious to see if that's going to be just a random thing that maybe it's brought back up in one of the MCU movies, or is it going to stay in the show, if that'll come back, or if it was just a random thing that happened that just sort of builds the texture of the show being in the MCU. All three of those options would be interesting to me, so I'm kind of curious about that. I am also curious about the fourth wall breaking of the show, because that is an element that is new to the MCU. Not necessarily new to Marvel, because Deadpool certainly does that, but it is something new to the MCU here. And I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it. They don't do a lot with it here, and I wonder if it's just a choice to like fit her comic persona, as well as just like do something kind of fun and different, and add a different texture to the show. Not so I don't think it necessarily needs justifying, but I really hope there's more depth to it than just she breaks the fourth wall. Like there is a little bit more to that choice of having her break the fourth wall, rather than it just being a thing there for flavor. So I can't really judge that because it only happened a few times in this episode, so I'm curious to see if it's going to be a more consistent element and a deeper element, or if it is just going to be a superfluous element that they added to the show. But I'm here for it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on She-Hulk Attorney at Law. I think there's elements of this episode that really has me encouraged, but there's a few things that has me skeptical. But I think the next episode is going to be the bigger tell, because that seems like it's going to be the episode that's going to get more into the actual, like, what this series is going to look like episode to episode, rather than this one being a more origin story. So that's my thoughts on She-Hulk. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching, my friends. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out some of my other reviews. But beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper.